I think, because you can imagine what he meant by that. The berating of a player, just in terms of tone of voice, rather than the constructive criticism catchphrase, right? So I just think that I just think he was a giant in baseball in a lot of ways over the course of his lifetime.
I also know that there was a time when Frank was managing the Orioles, including when they got off to that whatever start. It became this huge national story. The beat writers at that time were Ken Rosenthal of Fox fame, Richard Justice, one of the best beat writers and reporters I've ever been around in the business, and Tim Kirkshin of ESPN fame. So three kind of rising giants in the field were working for the two Baltimore papers and the Washington Sun.
You could never refer to Kirkshin as a giant ever. I mean, even in the rhetorical sense. I mean,
but I have played hoops with Timmy, and I will say he can rise. He's about 5 foot. He's about 5'0", but the man could play hoops and he could jump.
Oh, good for him.
He and I played hoops together a couple times down in Fort Myers, and we kicked butt, and it wasn't because of me. Remarkably good. He used to play like with Carol Ripken, who's a phenomenal player. So anyway, but my point is that these three guys, great reporters and good people, were covering Frank. Frank was known to be very difficult to deal with because he was so demanding and so terse. They loved him, man. They loved him. They went out to dinner with him. He treated them great. They tell the best Frank Robinson stories you will ever find because Frank let him in and Frank told him everything. So he had a great side to him that not everybody got to see, and this is a sad day. So thanks for your memories of Frank. Yeah,
I will tell you that on a personal self-aggrandizement story, but it was a really great moment for me. Happened just a year and a half ago. I was out and gave a kind of a little speech as part of the Dato Foundation, a USC event. For kids playing, giving kids the opportunity to play baseball. In the LA area, and a lot the Dato family has a lot of pull with the baseball community out there. And Steve Garvey was there, and there were lots of really good players there. But Joe Morgan was there, and Frank Robinson was there. And it was clear that Frank wasn't doing great. This is only a year and a half ago, and Joe Morgan was kind of. It was kind of, helping him around. They walked around, together at the cocktail party, and then before and after the dinner, and so I happened to just bump into them. They were walking one way, and I was walking the other at this event, and someone said to those two guys, but I think mostly to Frank. Frank, this is Roy Smalley, and. Something like, do you remember him or something like that? And I shook hands with Frank, and Joe Morgan piped in and said, shortstop could really hit. And Frank goes, I remember very well. And whether he did or not, have those two guys, I think it just kind of goes to, to Frank's, to who he was. I mean, he was a baseball guy and a lifer, and he didn't have to say anything like that. He could have said, how you doing, and moved on. He had plenty of other things to worry about. But for him and Joe to have that reaction, when I got a chance to see those two guys out there, was something that I won't forget.
Yeah, and you're being kind of modest here. I mean, you were a very good player. You were an all-star player. You're a shortstop who could hit home runs. You were a smart player. It doesn't really surprise me that they would have that reaction. So I think you're being a little modest there. Hey, let's go to some Twitter questions from Christopher Vernig, longtime listener. Do you think the Twins erred in not making a run at JT Realmuto? They would have had to give up a couple top prospects, not named Royce Lewis, but it seems like he's the type of rug that could really tie the room together. Very well phrased question here. And Roy, my answer to him on Twitter was, I think it would have taken Royce Lewis and two other top prospects and international draft money and maybe a current big leaguer. And they still might not have outbid the Phillies. So I just don't. It's one thing if the Phillies really think that they have a chance here to if they spend the right money in the right places, they could win it all. I don't know if they're right, but I think that's their internal feeling. It's time for them to go for it. The Twins they'd be giving up a lot of their best prospects, and I mean a lot of their best prospects, people who are going to be affordable for the next 6 to 8 years, for a chance that this really good catcher might, in a perfect world, maybe put them over the top. I just don't think that's where they are yet.
I am in total agreement with that. Would love to have that young man on the Twins ball club, but we have no idea what the price would have been, and I think whatever it was, it's closer to closer to what you were describing than not. It would have set them back. I mean, they're firmly about the business, diligently about the business of developing young players, whether that's their own draftees or ones they've traded for, and they're diligently about that business, and they have to stay that course now. That's why I think for the Twins right now, unless they were able to steal somebody, the closer kind of deal, or the Bryce Harper, if you can make a great deal for Kepler and somebody, those are the kinds of things that I would entertain. But as much as they need a catcher, they can't wipe out the organization. They're on too good a track right now with being able to feed the big league club with good young players, into the future.
And the catching position isn't necessarily a disaster for this team. I mean, they do have a good defensive catcher, and they have a young catcher who can hit, who seems to be getting better defensively. I mean, Realmuto would be a definite upgrade, but I don't know if he'd be enough of an upgrade to give away the farm.
Oh, I absolutely agree. It's all about, it's that old cost benefit analysis BS,
Mm-hmm.
But I mean, you look at what it would cost versus the degree of upgrade, and it's what you're saying, and you're absolutely right about that. Where you say, what would a Kimbrel upgrade in percentage terms mean versus for the amount of money you'd have to pay them, and therein lies the problem with even looking at Bryce Harper. You say, okay, we still believe Max Kepler is going to be a fine young player for a long time. We're hoping that's the case. Would Bryce Harper be an upgrade? Probably this year. Probably yes. But and the only way you say the upgrade is worth it is if you're able to trade Kepler and put together a package that then gets you a catcher or somebody else that really moves the needle for you. And Realmuto, the catching position doesn't do that for the amount of the cost benefits. It's just not there.
Question from MJ. Well, MJ asked us to reflect on Frank Robinson. We did that. MJ, the longtime listener of multiple shows across the network, and she came out to the Russo show, braved all the terrible weather, come out to the Russo show, and we really appreciate it. I wish she had hung around. I would have liked to chat with you, but we appreciate you being there, and thanks for the question. From MN Sports Fan on Twitter, what are the chances Lewis or Kirilloff are big club playing time, and is there a catcher in the organization that could be a long-term option?
Well, the second question first. Mitch Garver's improvement or lack thereof, kind of answers that. Decides that question. The answer to that question. I don't think there's anybody. I don't know of anybody in the organization right now that. From the catching position, that looks like it's the long-term answer there, and I could be wrong about that. But I think if there is anybody, there's multiple years away, so I think they're hoping that Mitch Garver continues to improve defensively, especially, and to some degree. Just continue the track he's been on offensively because he's, as you say, has shown the ability to hit at the big league level, and I think he's got the talent to hit a lot. He reminds me a lot of Brian Harper for the Twins back in the early '90s, and in terms of his hitting, in terms of his hitting style, he's like a right-handed. As Brian Harper's right-handed too. He reminds me of Brian Harper an awful lot. So I think he's got a chance, but I don't think there's anybody else. And as far as the kids coming up, you just don't know at all. They would have to absolutely force their way up, and also get help. This is a situation like somebody being 5 strokes behind or 6. This would be like Nick Faldo in the Greg Norman Masters, right? I mean, you're gonna have to shoot a 64, but you also need an awful lot of help from the leader. And for those kids to come up, they'd have to hit 364 in AAA, and then have somebody really failing at a position that they play. I think it's important as part of the plan for them to continue to prove to themselves at each level as they go up that they don't belong there. They're going to have to conquer each level, and the only way they won't have to conquer each level or do it for a full season is if they absolutely go lights out and somebody's really struggling in the big league lineup.
Thanks to Tony Hoagland, you're a State Farm agent. He works out of Champlin, but you can work with him wherever you live. It's Hoaglund. You can find him just by an easy Google search. And he's offering financial services as well as the kind of insurance that I take advantage of and that Michael Russo also takes advantage of.
Hey, Minnesota sports fans. This is your local State Farm agent, Tony Hoagland. I need you all to ask yourselves this question. If you're in an at-fault car accident and you are sued for $700,000, how much of that $700,000 will my current insurance company pay? If you are unsure or can't answer all $700,000, you need to give us a call. State Farm has been number one in car insurance since World War II and number one in homeowners insurance since 1964. For a no-obligation review of your current policies, call us at 763-421-4900 or check out our website at www.champlininsurance.com.
From Peter Gasperlin on Twitter, he basically, to summarize, he said that he read my piece about the Timberwolves in the Friday morning paper, basically saying this team is in really bad shape, not just immediately, but their structure, their decision-making, the roster, their contracts, they're really in a bad spot right now, even though there is some talent on the team. And he basically asked me if the exact same thing could be written about Jim Pohlad and the Twins. And I think he was hoping I would say yes, because I think he's one of the many disgruntled Twins fans who are sick of watching this team play this decade. My answer was no. And here's my rationale, Roy. The Timberwolves don't have a general manager. They don't know that they have a coach. They have an owner who has not had has had one winning season in the last 15 years and has made some bad hires. And he's my boss, so I'm risking my job by saying that, but it's true. They have terrible contracts. The Twins really don't have any of those problems. We don't know if Falvey and Levine are going to succeed, but Derek Falvey is a legitimate number one decision maker. He's got to put a winner on the field to keep the job, like anybody else in that position. I don't doubt his intelligence. Twins ownership, although Twins ownership drives fans crazy, it's been very stable and has supported winners before. They don't have bad contracts. They have a strong farm system was rated 4th best in baseball recently. They have good young talent on the roster. So, I understand Twins fans' frustrations, but this team is not in the kind of oh no bind that the Timberwolves are in.
Absolutely true. And baseball, as if you look around the major leagues and you look at the teams that are winning and then all of a sudden don't win. There's a lot of them, and how hard it is to get back to winning again. It's really not easy to sustain a high level of being contenders and postseason participants in baseball. I mean, it's evidenced by the number of teams that have not been able to do it. It doesn't take much in a 2-year